Alright, so I usually don't do this before the video begins, but this video does deal with triggering subject matter like terror attacks, and if that proves difficult for you, then you can always click off the video here. But yeah, this is where the video begins for real now. So Mr. Enter had a very hot take about the new Pixar film, Turning Red.
This film takes place less than a year after the September 11 terrorist attacks. I bring this up because it radically altered the culture of the time, in ways that make this movie feel exceptionally ignorant of the time. Even though, literally, the only reason I can comprehend that this movie is set explicitly in 2002 is because the director grew up in that exact year. Yes, this film takes place in Canada, not the United States, but all over the Western world. Canada, America, the UK, much of Europe. People were paranoid because 9/11 wasn't the only terror attack that had happened. It was the major theme of the decade. I mean, I can understand not wanting everyone to be so fearful, as that goes against the tone that the movie is trying to establish. But then you have very awkward moments if you actually were there and you do actually remember the time period.
Blaze, the movie fan, did not like the amount of hate that Enter got, so he decided to respond to it, and that's where I come in.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Blaze the movie fan, and you know, I feel fucking awful about how I was towards the mysterious Mr. Enter. More specifically, my answer in one of his videos in my video worst videos 2021. Well, to make sure something like that doesn't happen again, the worst videos list for next year, I am going to get the script checked for that video before I even think about recording any lines, I promise. And versus video about J.K. Rowling, yeah, I changed my mind. That video has to be on the list. It has to be, because it's that fucking disgusting.
First of all, my audience may want to keep in mind Blaze's Mr. Enter entry in his worst videos of 2021, for I'll make points about that later on in my video. But second of all, Blaze mentions this one video that he's considering for the next list, and this is completely irrelevant and pointless. This is a video about the backlash that Mr. Enter got for his Turning Red review. All you had to say was that your Mr. Enter segment on your previous list was bad. Heck, the only reason why the previous list is even relevant in the first place is because Mr. Enter was on the list. So mentioning anything else about that list or future lists is just unneeded.
But aside from that though, never mind, it's not important what I was about to say.
So you know it's not important, and yet you still feel the need to mention it. Do I even need to be here anymore?
Anyway, the biggest problem with my entry on the mysterious Mr. Enter's video I'm talking about is that I was extremely toxic. Not only did I tell him to quit making videos, I also said that he doesn't have fun making videos anymore. I later found out that's completely false. He still has fun making videos.
That will also be important later.
But anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about the mysterious Mr. Enter. Oh, that's what before I go on. An obscure member of the slideshow commentary community, Firebolt PT, made a short commentary on my entry of the mysterious Mr. Enter. It is really short enough to be considered a one-shot commentary. It's part of a long video where he covers 3 videos at once. I highly recommend you check his video out and tell him that Blaze the movie fan sent you. And honestly, it's injustice that he doesn't have anywhere near 1,000 subscribers yet. Let's change that. But do me a favor and do not subscribe to him simply because I am fucking telling you to. Only subscribe to him if he makes content that actually interests you. The last thing I want to give him are dead subscribers. I hope you understand.
Oh, more unnecessary stuff? Goody. Like, Firebolt PT is a cool guy and all, but you really don't need to shill his channel or even mention his video. You have already gone over why your Mr. Enter segment was bad, claiming that it was toxic since you told Enter to quit in a part of the video that I alluded to earlier. You don't need to keep padding out this video. We're over 2 minutes into this 9-minute video, and you have not defended Mr. Enter's Turning Red review yet.
Back on topic. Recently, the mysterious Mr. Enter got a lot of backlash for his video of Turning Red. I did see Turning Red before, and I just did it because I was curious. I never officially reviewed it. And I am going to. But it will probably take a longer time since it will be a skit-driven review. Meaning that there will be only one portion of the review that's actually the review. Anyway, the awfulness of that video is blown way out of proportion. So since I feel bad about being so toxic towards the middle of my video worst videos of 2021, I am gonna defend the guy because Honestly, he's a good guy.
And that's why I told my audience to keep Blaze's list in mind. Blaze admits that he's mostly making this video because he feels bad about his worst videos of 2021 list, which wouldn't inherently be an issue if his points were valid, but that really isn't the case here. So essentially, your video exists because, oh, I wronged Enter, which is not a strong foundation for a video where you call out bad criticism.
He might act like an asshole at times and downright cunty, but I know he means well, and is only doing what he thinks is right. He certainly does not deserve the amount of backlash he got for the review. Now, I did watch the review 3 times, and you know what all 3 of these times have in common? I looked for the part where he was saying something insensitive about 9/11, but I couldn't find it. So that leads me to believe that the people who accused him of that are taking the video out of context. Now, to be fair, I don't think any of those people are intentionally misrepresenting him, but it's still sketchy that I watched the video 3 times and couldn't find the biggest issue most people had.
Are you actually going to show the context of people criticizing the review? There are a lot of different people who criticized Mr. Enter's review, almost as if he was trending on Twitter or something. Oh, they're taking the review out of context. At the very least, I know what context they're referring to. See, Alex the Critic made a very similar video to this one, essentially responding to the detractors of Mr. Enter's Turning Red review, and though his video is definitely a lot worse than Blaze's, at the very least, he shows every single tweet about the review and responds to them individually. Now, Blaze doesn't need to respond to the detractors individually. After all, he does imply that he's responding to the general consensus.
But it's still sketchy that I watched the video 3 times and couldn't find the biggest issue most people had.
But the point is, Blaze, if one of the worst videos I've seen all year can show what is being responded to, then you should be able to do this as well. Oh, but showing your sweaty face on camera is so much more important. You don't even prove that Mr. Enter's review might be taken out of context either. Like, usually when someone says that something is being taken out of context, the original context is provided to prove that to be the case. And you even say that they might be taking the review out of context, meaning that you're fully aware that this point is based on nothing more than a guess, an assumption. If your point is essentially a guess, then maybe it's best not to make the point in the first place, since if you can't even prove your own point, then God knows the point must not be valid. You never even make a case for why Enter isn't being insensitive. Aren't you trying to prove that Enter's detractors are unreasonable? Cause you are not gonna sway people to your side when your reasoning for this isn't insensitive barely even exists.
Honestly, the mysterious Mr. Enter has made far worse.
Okay, so maybe Enter has made worse. However, that does not really matter. This is a subjective point in a video that is trying to prove why Enter's detractors are not valid. To which, yes, I know Blaze says that he sucks at making objective points, but when you're properly defending someone, you kinda have to be objective because you cannot convince someone that their stance is arbitrary based on an opinion, for opinions on their own are not inherently flawed. Also, given how the infamous tweet about the review, which is why so many people know about the video in the first place, has about 8.6 million views, that means that Enter's detractors are looking at this video in a vacuum, which does not evaluate who Enter is or what the rest of his work is like. Some of them might not even know who Enter is because his following is not nearly as big as the tweet. So Enter making worse videos is completely irrelevant. And all of this is ignoring how Enter has made worse is not an argument. Even if Enter has made worse videos in your opinion, people can still take issue with the Turning Red review and dislike it more.
I'm not saying that he did nothing wrong or that his review is great. Honestly, it's not great at all. It suffers from the same problems most of his reviews do. And that's of course bringing politics to a discussion that has no relevance to it. Was there any point of bringing up real life information in a review about a fucking movie with fictional events?
Okay, so when Blaze says that Enter brings unnecessary politics to Turning Red, he must be referring to the infamous 9/11 bit. Now of course Blaze says the words real life information, and Enter brings up some real world media in his review. Blaze is definitely right about that. that, but it's stuff like anime and music.
The anime style also feels off due to the time period. While anime did exist in the West, obviously, besides Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball, Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh!, it was pretty niche until like 2005. Then we started getting tricklings of things like Zatch Bell, One Piece, and so on. I mean, anime definitely was there, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't the styling of the time. Speaking of which, by 2002, boy bands were on the way out. That is literally the year that Justin Timberlake went solo, effectively ending the craze for a decade. 2002 wasn't a very in-your-face time either. It was quiet. It was grungy. Linkin Park was one of the biggest bands in the world.
However, neither anime nor music are inherently political. Anime is just Japanese animation, and music is something you listen to. Even grungy music isn't inherently political. It's performed to express how edgy and depressed you are. It might have the occasional line about society, but it's still mostly about the feelings of the writer. So when Blaze says that the video is unnecessarily political, he must be referring to the 9/11 rant, or else his complaint makes no sense. But this would cause a massive issue, because Enter's infamous 9/11 rant is why his review is so infamous in the first place.
However, when someone goes on a long rant about why turning red, not including the effects of a post-9/11 world, is bad, it comes off as a little bit tone deaf. In that sense, Mr. Enter threw viewers for a bit of a loop when he reviewed the film and went on to criticize it for not having a more paranoid and morose tone, in line with the international community's response during 2002. This led to a ton of satirical images and edits, placing Turning Red's characters in a dramatic tone shift away from the fun stylings of Pixar and directly into a hellscape, where May acknowledges the horror of the Pentagon being destroyed. It's worth noting the fact that 9/11 is certainly an issue referenced in meme culture millions of times over, although generally it's designated as a bit of an edgelord topic. However, in this instance, it feels different. It feels like more of an acknowledgement of a strange argument that can only be published in the world of YouTube, rather than something someone might see on primetime TV. This may be because 9/11 is not exactly something children were thinking about 24/7. Of course, there are long-standing effects of the event that influenced the world today, so intense was its consequences, but the children in Turning Red are hardly likely to have it at the top of their priority list a year later. We can't speak for the parents, however, but it's not exactly a film about that.
And that's not even mentioning how the tweet that made everyone aware of Enter's ignorant take and got him to trend on Twitter says, like, seriously, what purpose does including 9/11 serve to the narrative of Turning Red? Which is essentially the same point that Blaze made, you know, questioning the political relevance of the film. So essentially, when Blaze says that politics are unnecessary in Turning Red, oh, that's fine. But when others say that the review shouldn't have Enter's hot take, that's going too far. How am I supposed to see this as anything other than a massive double standard?
And when we're not properly representing the decade it's supposed to represent, it's a valid complaint. I'm not sure if his points are valid or not, but if they are, that is a valid complaint.
Almost everything Enter brought up in his review, from the music to the anime, was brought up because Enter felt like the movie wasn't properly representing its decade. Right before this, you said this real life stuff was unnecessary.
Was there any point of bringing up real life information in a review about a fucking movie with fictional events?
And now you're saying that it's a valid complaint. What am I even supposed to say to that?
Making a big deal out of no character referencing 9/11. Okay, to be fair, I can somewhat see how that's insensitive.
Earlier you said that you watched Mr. Enter's review 3 times and not once did you see any insensitivity.
Now, I did watch the review 3 times, and you know what all 3 of these times have in common? I looked for the part when he was saying something insensitive about 9/11, but I couldn't find it.
And now you're saying that you can somewhat see how this is insensitive? How did you not notice the obvious contradiction?
But come on, guys, this is minuscule compared to the cons who call this actual disaster in history a conspiracy theory. They deserve the hate, not Mr. Enter.
Are people really comparing 9/11 conspiracy theorists to Enter? Because the main complaint I've seen with Enter's review is that 9/11 doesn't need to be in Turning Red. Again, this video really does lack context. More pressingly, I guess to you, people have said worse things about 9/11, though morality is subjective. So to say that this is worse than Enter is pretty flawed on its own. For an example of morality being subjective, in some countries, being gay is straight up illegal because it's seen as degeneracy and not being straight defies God's will. In other countries, homosexual weddings are not allowed, or simply being gay cannot be portrayed in certain movies or TV shows because apparently that, of all things, will negatively affect children. Now, of course, that's dumb. film. But at the end of the day, these countries just have different standards, even if those standards are stupid. And see, I have to make my distaste blatantly clear for people who are going to try to paint me as a homophobe. But regardless, even if there are subjectively worse things said about 9/11, that doesn't suddenly mean that Enter shouldn't be getting hate, which is the thing that Blaze opposes. To which, from what I saw, it was mostly criticism towards Mr. Enter, but whatever. Like, by your own admission, Enter said kind of insensitive things, and yet the hate, aka the consequences for saying those insensitive things, should not be directed towards him because people have said worse. Oh, Atrocity A was a terrible event, but it didn't kill as many people as Atrocity B, so let's forget all about Atrocity A. That's essentially what I'm hearing.
Another thing that I want to point out too, and this is unrelated to the mysterious Mr. Enter, by the way.
Another unrelated tangent? Really? If it's unrelated to Mr. Enter's review, then it shouldn't be in this video because it does not fit the video's topic.
I've heard many people say that this movie's very sexual. You legitimately don't fucking see it. I'm sure the word sex is in the dialogue as well as pervert, and the main character is going through puberty. Though it's exaggerated to make it look like she turns into a fucking panda, or whatever the hell it is. But puberty isn't directly related to sex. I mean, it's somewhat, but not entirely. I don't know how puberty works, but I do know that it has more to do with a kid mentally changing into a teenager than it does have to do with sex.
Didn't you say that you were making your own review of Turning Red? Couldn't this have been saved for your own review? Cause it surely isn't relevant to this video's topic.
Now I assume this, I'm not sure, I haven't heard anyone say this, but I assume that some people think that the movie should be rated PG-13 or R instead. And to those people, if they exist, again, I'm not sure if they do, you are a fucking moron. The movie does have its proper rating. Now to be fair, I'm like 85% sure that most people, or hell, I would say everybody, already knows this. I was just making up a possible scenario. And if it's not at all based in reality, I understand. This was just a what-if scenario, if you will. Oh, and back to his review.
Dang, I almost forgot I was watching a video about Mr. Enter there. Seriously, why are there long tangents in a video like this one?
I wouldn't call it bad, I would call it mediocre. And if you're wondering about my overall opinion on Turning Red, well, it's fucking awesome. A review will be made eventually explaining why.
Oh, so you know you can explain it in the review, but nah, I need to mention my own opinion here because this video surely isn't padded out enough.
Yeah, I just found this video mediocre. It wasn't a great video, it wasn't an awful video either, it was just mediocre.
Did you really feel the need to say mediocre 3 times? I know I'm nitpicking and repeating myself, but this is just another instance of padding, not to mention its needless redundancy.
Honestly, it's no different from people blew how bad Chris Bush's videos were way up the proportion back in 2007. You ever see people, it's that bad. I really don't feel like going over the history of the arid gamer controversy at the moment. Especially since talking about it has been overdone to death. And I wanna remain on track.
Says the guy who keeps feeling the need to pan out the video. Also, do you really need an example here? If the example requires some form of context that you're not even willing to provide, then it's not really needed, since the audience may not understand the example. But nah, we need even more padding. All the 13-year-old girls in the audience are mad because Blaze has far more pads than they do. A birdie!
Excuse my fucking rambling. I probably said far too fucking much about this Family Guy reviews, and I apologize for that.
How is it possible to be self-aware while having no self-awareness at the exact same time?
My main point is, people are taking his Turning Red review way out of proportion. Now to be fair, none of the videos said that he was wrong for not liking the movie or thinking it's just okay. But it was still blown way out of proportion. Come on guys, give him a fucking break. He isn't a cunt. He's a regular human being with a lot of flaws. He's really no different from the rest of us. Let's be fair here, we are all human beings with a lot of flaws.
I guess, but some of us say stupid things and then we need to be called out for those stupid things. That's kind of what being a commentator and giving criticism is about. At this point, it just feels like you making excuses, since, as you said, the logic of we have flaws can be applied to literally everyone ever. So that would be a valid enough reason to make Enter's flaws even more apparent. And even if he's not the C word, as you say, which is essentially your way of saying he's not an irredeemable person, that doesn't really matter since people are not evaluating Enter as a person. They are evaluating his arguments. From what I've seen at least, people aren't simply just sending hate to Enter. They are criticizing him for his bizarre take. You know, unless you have context that says otherwise. Oh wait! And honestly, I don't really have final thoughts, so you can click off the video now.